Today is 861st day to come here to listen to learn. I'm learning. I hope this will support your dreams, your goals, allow you to become the person that you want to become. Today, I want to expand on emotional home. Yesterday, I shared that emotional home could be a positive and negative, and of course, when you have a positive emotional home, it's much more easy to pursue something meaningful in life. Today, we'll share for people who really don't have emotional home that they would love to. Maybe it's not negative, but maybe it's just stagnant. I mean, you want to really pursue some very positive things. But today we'll share on things that really triggers to back home, go back to the emotional home. Because sometimes we leave that, but something triggers back to those emotional home that you do not like, and you know that you don't like it. But at the same time, you just do not know what happens that leads to go back to your emotional home. So today we'll share the list of things that what potentially could trigger you go back to really emotional home that really feels comfortable and familiar. Because emotional home, it might be that you don't like it, you hate it, but at the same time, it's so comfortable and familiar. A lot of times people stay in uncomfortable place because they just feel comfortable being uncomfortable. And of course, that's a sad thing to say, but that's a lot of people. What do they do? Number one is stressful events. So during stressful events, of course, you want to have some kind of comfort. So what do? Sometimes you're looking for wrong places. You're looking for emotional home. And in that comfort, in that emotional home, those emotions are not comforting whatsoever. It might be that your emotional home is sadness. And you're used to that. And it's almost comforting to feel sadness. So when you have stressful events, you're able to get like, now I have stressful event in my life. And most likely I feel sad because it just triggered to go back to my emotional home. And just awareness of that could allow you to really break through the emotion that you're already having and really go to really positive emotion. Because sadness is not your emotional home. It's not supposed to be emotional home. But if you really allow yourself, because until you're aware that your sadness could be triggered by a stressful one that led to your mind to really desire go back to emotional home that is comforting, until then you will not be able to fix it. Number two is conflict and disagreement. That means that a lot of times when people go through conflict, disagreement, they do not know what that emotion is. Especially when you don't have a lot of conflicts or disagreements. At some point, when you have that disagreement, when you have that conflict, you might not know like what kind of emotion you're supposed to feel about it. And because uncertainty of the emotions, then at least some emotions will be certain and some emotions will be familiar. And it triggers go back emotional home to comforting emotions and feelings. And that means, again, back to the sadness and back to all the negative emotions that you felt in the worry in the past. Number three is loss and grief. That's pretty easy to understand that it could trigger going back to emotional home. And of course, when you have loss of grief, and I say, why I feel this way? Just besides grief, there's additional sadness I'm getting. Where is that coming from? I don't deserve that sadness. I know that my life is better than that. And I know, of course, we understand that the loss and grief is there, those emotions are there, but I'm not supposed to double dipping on sadness from emotional home. So no, like this sadness is coming not from grief. This sadness is coming from all the worry that I did in the past. And being aware of that, I say, okay, like I'm not accepting that worry, I'm not accepting this sadness, I'm taking this grief, I'm dealing with just the grief, and I have other grateful emotions for my life that I want to make. Number four is major life changes. Again, this is uncertainty. When you're going through life changes, when you really move, change jobs, change like there are so many different changes could potentially happen, and it could trigger really looking for stability in an emotional home. So that means if your external world is unstable, you're potentially looking stability in internal world. But the only stable thing at that moment, it might be that is your emotional home that is negative. It's crazy. But that's what people do, and including myself. Like, I'm not any different. I'm a human being, and I still need to work on my emotions and being able to regulate. Number five is routines and habits. So that means some routines could trigger some bad emotions. For example, drinking. Maybe drinking leads to emotional home and your emotional sadness and worry. Or maybe, of course, at the same time, could be routines and habits could be built on positive emotional home. So it means every time that you exercise, it builds your emotion. It goes to blissful, joyful, fulfillment, content, joy. Now, again, it depends how you use routines and habits and what kind of routines and habits you will use to trigger your emotion. Because if you don't like the emotion that you have, emotional home that you have now, that means you're able to change that and work on building some other emotional home that you really want to pursue. Number 6 is celebrations and achievements. Celebrations and achievements. That's, of course, it could be leading to joy, fulfillment, and a lot of times it's supposed to that lead it. But again, a lot of times people do not know how to handle success and failure. Success and failure. So even though that you achieve the massive results, achieve some kind of results, achieve some kind of goal, you go back to your emotional home because you still don't know how to accept that massive win. I mean, you don't know that if you enough, you still have that imposter syndrome, and because of that, you start questioning it. And because of that, it triggers you go back to your emotional home and start to feel worry, again, sadness, even though that you won something big. But because you didn't know how to handle that joy, it was very uncomfortable. Now you go back to, again, your home, emotional home, and again, you start again. Number 7 is relationship dynamics. It's interesting that that's how much our relations could influence our state, emotional state. Because someone in your immediate family, intimate relationship person, could really trigger you quite often to go back to emotional home. The way how they act, the way how you question you, or the way that like maybe judge you, whatever it is. It might trigger, like it depends, of course, what kinds of insecurities you have, what kind of traumas you have, everything between, like everything is different to every single situation. But it might be that your significant other is triggering and pushing you towards your emotional home. And that's what's supposed to be. We're supposed to have other person, a significant other, who pushes us to emotional home. But that emotional home is supposed to be the positive, the joy, the content, bliss. And that's where we're supposed to go. But now, of course, a lot of times it happens differently. A significant other is pushing us to emotional home. But unfortunately, that emotional home is not good at all whatsoever. Number 8 is reflection and self-discovery. Reflection and self-discovery. It might be that when you really reflect on yourself, you don't like something about yourself, and that could trigger, really go to your emotional home. You look into your failures and start to like believe that those failures are who you are, and you go emotional home. Failure is never who you are. Failure is what you did. Failure is what you did. It never is who you are. That is very, very important to understand. Sometimes people don't have to distinguish that failure is what you did. Failure is not a person, never a person. And when you know that, then of course you're able to don't go to emotional home. Because people go to emotional home in that is negative, is who start to accept failure as who they are, and they start to be sad and worry again. Number 9 is moments of vulnerability. When people feel exposed, they're looking for security. Looking for security, and outside they will not get any security whatsoever. Again, and then go back to internal security, and they go to emotional home. And again, that emotional home is not there to help you. And so interesting that people have emotional home to secure ourselves, but our security system is totally wrong. It's out of whack, and we need to build that security system in place that really could protect us, not hurt us. Number 10 is recurring life patterns. It might be that you're going through life, through some cycles in life. And those cycles, when that cycle comes back and there's one cycle of your life, it happens again, and it triggers go back to your emotional state, emotional home. In both kind of patterns, like when you look into, like, of course, patterns will not happen like maybe every year, maybe every 2 years, maybe every 3 years, maybe every 5 years, something happens in your life that, like, it is some kind of cycles. So what kind of cycles what kind of patterns you are able to see and say, like, what happens when I am in this pattern? What kind of emotions do I have in this life season? What kind of emotions do I have in this life season? And ask, Does any of those seasons triggers me to feel a certain way? And why is it? It might be that one life cycle is triggering to pushing you back into those negative emotions that you do not like and doesn't serve you. Number 11 is triggers from the past. Triggers from the past. Maybe something that like you do on a daily basis, and or like once a month, and do something, and that triggers remembering the past. And remembering the past could potentially trigger you into some kind of emotions. One thing is that I heard that I really love is that when you never healed from the past, when you remember it, you still feel emotion. When you learn the lesson and reflected on the past, it will not bring as much emotions. Because when you understand that we're able to reflect on emotions, we're not supposed to feel the emotions of the past. Those emotions, you already dealt with it. You already experienced. You don't deserve yourself to punish yourself with all those negative emotions again. You're supposed to reflect on and be aware of the past, but not feel the emotion again. Unless, of course, you want to feel that out or want to anchor the emotion. But that's again this when you feel joy, bliss, content, fulfillment, then you want to really anchor them and remember that how it felt. Because a lot of those positive emotions create a great attitude and allows you to pursue meaningful things. Now, while you anchor the negative emotions, and you still, when you remember that, and you still feel the emotion, it's puts you down. Like it makes you smaller, and we don't want that. So we of course want to heal, and then sometimes maybe even therapy is very important. Because when I listen to Al Milat, he always said like most of his people who really come and join his podcast are massively successful people, massively successful. And majority of all those people went through therapy. I think that a lot of times we need to really see in therapy as a positive thing to deal with the trauma or the things that we need to deal with. Every single person has some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It depends on the person, the things that we need to deal with. And I truly believe that every single person needs to find a way how they could heal from them. And when they heal from them, they don't need to feel those emotions, but it doesn't need to really get triggered and go back to those emotional feelings. And the last one, emotional resilience. So that means that during tough days, when you need to use resilience in your life, it might be that it will trigger you for grounding and stability. And grounding and stability, again, will look for home. Look for home internally. Because especially when even at home might be there is no security, no grounding, like external home. So you start looking for internal home. And that will trigger that resilience. You going back to the sadness, worry, disappointment, I don't know, all the negative emotions that you had built in that emotional home. And then we need to kick all those negative emotions out of emotional home and really start putting in those rooms, like if you have a massive emotional home, internal home. And in those every single room there is some kind of negative emotion. I need you to really say that you didn't pay the dues. That's it. Go out. Let's kick those and make those rooms vacant that we can put the positive emotions, the joy emotions, gratefulness, appreciation. I think that this is a very, very powerful lesson. Understanding that what is your home? What is your emotional home? What is your feelings when you're going through life? Because that, I truly believe it will determine how you perform during tough days. Because when life triggers, when there's setback, disappointment, and now you feel worry, sadness, anger, shame, disappointment, guilt, that shrinks you, makes you smaller. It's very hard to pursue massive problems, massive goals when you shrink. That's why it's very, very important to understand that we need to work on ourselves, reflect, do mindful practices, positive habit formations, healthy relations, set boundaries, like emotion regulation skills. As I said, seek professional support, like explore new experiences. And then, of course, those things will help you to make sure that you are changing that. So I hope you choose to win and see you tomorrow.